I was 34 years old, worked as a senior project coordinator for a commercial construction company, and believed that if I planned carefully enough, family gatherings could avoid disaster. My dad, Richard, was 67 and had spent 3 straight afternoons polishing the old silver lobster cracker that had belonged to my grandmother. He always said every special meal deserved one beautiful tradition, even if nobody noticed it anymore. At exactly 7:42 p.m. on the night everything unraveled, someone at our table laughed, waved a menu, and unknowingly destroyed months of careful effort with a single decision. I didn't understand the full damage until much later. What I remember most isn't the receipt. It's that silver lobster cracker sitting alone on an empty white plate several weeks afterward, catching sunlight from the kitchen window like it was waiting for a family that no longer existed. What I didn't understand that night was that the lobster dinner wasn't really about seafood, and it definitely wasn't about money. It was the final exam for a family system I'd spent my entire life helping survive, and the first time I finally stopped trying to pass it. In my family, lobster wasn't just dinner. It was a ranking system disguised as celebration. Every major birthday, anniversary, or promotion ended the same way. Whoever was considered the most successful was quietly expected to take care of things. The menus got more expensive, the wine bottles got older, and somehow the bill always drifted toward the same person. Nobody announced the rules. They simply existed. The polished silver lobster cracker became the symbol of those evenings. Dad would place it beside the serving platter before anyone arrived, wipe away fingerprints with the corner of a linen towel, and smile with quiet pride. It had belonged to Grandma Eleanor, who believed that beautiful objects reminded people to behave beautifully. Unfortunately, that belief didn't survive her. My older sister, Vanessa, had become the unofficial manager of every family event after Mom died. She never raised her voice. She didn't have to. She had perfected a calm, polished way of making selfish decisions sound reasonable. Whenever someone questioned her plans, she'd smile and say, "Don't embarrass the family." It sounded like advice. Most of the time, it was a warning. Dad never argued. He spent more time worrying about everyone else's comfort than his own. He'd refill drinks before anyone asked, memorize everyone's favorite desserts, and insist on paying for small things even after retirement stretched his pension thinner every year. I wish I could say I always defended him. I didn't. Every time Vanessa brushed off one of his ideas, I'd tell myself she was just stressed. Every time she changed plans without asking him, I'd smooth things over because keeping the peace felt easier than confronting the truth. I wasn't just watching the pattern. I was helping maintain it. When Dad suggested celebrating his retirement by taking the whole family to Harbor House Seafood on Saturday, October 18, I wanted everything to go perfectly. The reservation was for 12 people at 6:30 p.m. I confirmed it by email with the restaurant on October 2, forwarded the confirmation to our family group chat, and even asked everyone to reply so there would be no confusion. Every single person responded. Vanessa replied last. "Looks good. We'll figure out the details later." Dad smiled when he read it. I should have paid much closer attention to those last 5 words. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather Dad loved. By 5:55 p.m., we were already seated in Harbor House Seafood, and the polished silver lobster cracker rested beside the center platter exactly where Dad always placed it. He straightened it twice before anyone else noticed. Everyone else noticed the menu instead. Vanessa was unusually cheerful. Her husband, Mark, ordered a bottle of 2019 Napa Valley Cabernet before the waiter even finished introducing himself. My cousin Derek joked that if we were celebrating retirement, we should celebrate properly. Within 15 minutes, the table was covered with seafood towers, oysters, king crab legs, twin Maine lobsters, caviar appetizers, and side dishes nobody had discussed beforehand. Dad leaned toward me and whispered, "I don't think I've ever seen this much food." I smiled, but something felt off. Nobody asked about prices. Nobody asked who was paying. At 7:42 p.m., while our dessert menus were being handed out, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Vanessa. "Total is just under $4,000. Tell the waiter you'll put it on your card." Don't embarrass the family. Asterisk asterisk. For a second, I genuinely thought she'd sent it to the wrong person. I looked up. She was smiling across the table, laughing at something Mark had said, as if she'd just asked me to pass the butter instead of covering a bill larger than my monthly mortgage payment. The finished meal sat in front of us, empty lobster shells stacked on silver trays, half-finished wine glasses reflecting the restaurant lights, melted butter hardening inside tiny white dishes. Dad was carefully wrapping Grandma's lobster cracker in the linen napkin he'd brought from home, completely unaware that the celebration he'd spent weeks anticipating had quietly turned into an invoice with my name on it. I texted back immediately. Asterisk, we agreed everyone was paying for themselves. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then another message. You're the one who can afford it. Don't embarrass the family. Asterisk asterisk. There it was again. Not a request. Not even an explanation. Just the same sentence she'd used for years whenever she wanted compliance dressed up as loyalty. I looked around the table differently after that. Mark avoided my eyes. Derek suddenly became fascinated by his phone. My Aunt Susan folded her napkin with deliberate concentration. Nobody looked surprised. That hurt more than the bill itself. This hadn't been a spontaneous misunderstanding. It had been planned. The expensive wine. The extra lobster tails. The seafood towers no one needed. They had ordered like people who already believed someone else would absorb the consequences. Dad noticed my expression and quietly asked, "Everything okay?" I almost told him. I almost handed him my phone right there. Instead, I slipped it back into my pocket and forced a smile that felt painfully unfamiliar. "Yeah," I said. "Just a work message." He nodded, accepting the answer without suspicion. That small moment still bothers me. Not because I lied. Because I knew exactly why I did. I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting his retirement dinner from becoming another family argument. For a few more minutes, I wanted him to believe the evening had been exactly what he'd hoped it would be. Dad believed me. He smiled, thanked the waiter for the meal, and slowly stood from the table. Before putting on his jacket, he picked up Grandma Eleanor's silver lobster cracker, polished one last fingerprint from it with his handkerchief, and slipped it carefully into the small wooden case he'd carried for years. He had no idea everyone else had already decided who would pay for the evening. When the leather check presenter finally arrived, Vanessa didn't even reach toward it. She nudged it across the table with 2 fingers until it stopped in front of me. No one said a word. The silence was somehow louder than an argument. I opened the folder. Total, $3, $987.46. With tax and gratuity already included. The waiter stood politely beside me, unaware that he had become part of a family power struggle. I closed the folder. "Something's wrong," I said calmly. "We agreed everyone would cover their own meals." Vanessa gave me the same patient smile she'd used since we were children. "Oh, Emily," she sighed, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "You're making this awkward." Then she leaned closer. Asterisk asterisk, don't embarrass the family. Asterisk asterisk. The words landed differently this time. Not because they were harsher. Because I finally understood they had never been about protecting the family. They were about protecting her authority. I looked at Dad. He immediately began reaching for his wallet. "I'm sure I can help with." "No," Vanessa interrupted before he could finish. "Dad, you've already done enough." The sentence sounded kind. It wasn't. His pension couldn't have covered even a quarter of the bill. She knew that. So did everyone else. I realized this wasn't only about taking advantage of me. It was about making sure Dad saw me give in, reinforcing the idea that keeping the peace always required someone else to sacrifice. Years of little memories rushed back, so quickly they almost overlapped. The vacation where I paid for the rental house because Vanessa had forgotten her bonus hadn't arrived. Mom's birthday dinner where my credit card somehow ended up on the table because you're so organized. Christmas gifts that became more expensive every year because I was doing well. Every single time, I'd convinced myself it was temporary. Every single time, I'd told myself family was worth it. I wasn't just the person being used. I had become the person who made using me possible. That realization hurt far more than the number printed at the bottom of the receipt. I excused myself and stepped outside into the cool October air. The harbor smelled like salt and diesel fuel, and fishing boats rocked quietly against the dock. I called my younger brother, Ben, first. He answered on the second ring. After listening for less than a minute, he sighed. "I know it's unfair," he said, "but just pay it. It's one dinner. Don't turn this into something everyone talks about for years." I thanked him anyway. Then I called my Aunt Carol, the person who had always told me to stand up for myself when I was younger. She surprised me too. "Vanessa can be difficult," she admitted, "but retirement dinners only happen once. Money comes back. Family doesn't." I stared across the dark water, wondering why preserving the family always seemed to require the same person giving something up. Just as I was about to walk back inside, my phone rang again. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Helen Brooks, retired school principal who had become like family after Mom passed away. She had been watching Dad's dog while we were at dinner. She listened quietly until I finished. Then she said something no one else had. "Emily, they're asking you to buy their comfort with your silence. You don't owe anyone that." She didn't tell me what decision to make. She simply gave me permission to believe that I wasn't the unreasonable one. For the first time that entire evening, I felt something stronger than guilt. I felt clear. The walk back into Harbor House felt different. Nothing around me had changed. The white tablecloths were still spotless. The chandeliers still reflected off polished wine glasses. Dad was still thanking the waiter for taking such good care of us. The only thing that had changed was me. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to find the least painful way to fit inside a system that only worked because someone quietly accepted being treated unfairly. I sat down and looked directly at Vanessa. "I'm willing to help," I said evenly. "I'll pay for Dad's dinner as my retirement gift to him. Everyone else can cover what they ordered." It was a generous offer. Dad's meal had been $118, including dessert and coffee. I even offered to split the gratuity evenly so no one would have to recalculate anything. For a brief second, I thought she might accept it. Instead, she folded her hands. "No." The answer came without hesitation. "Either you pay the entire bill tonight, or everyone here will remember who ruined your father's retirement dinner." She paused just long enough for the words to settle. "And if you embarrass this family now, don't expect invitations to Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter." Think carefully. There it was. Reputation. Relationships. Guilt. Every pressure point she had relied on for years, delivered like a contract. I looked around the table. No one interrupted. No one challenged her. Dad looked confused more than anything, as though he had missed the first half of a conversation. I realized then that I had been fighting for a better position inside a game someone else had designed. There was no winning it, only surviving it. And I was tired of surviving. I took a slow breath. "I'm not leaving the family," I said quietly. "I'm leaving the scoreboard." No one spoke. The sentence surprised even me, but once I heard it out loud, I knew it was true. I paid only for Dad's dinner. The waiter, sensing the tension, calmly separated the checks without asking unnecessary questions. Vanessa looked genuinely stunned. Not angry. Confused. As though she had just discovered the rules weren't permanent after all. The following Monday at 8:14 a.m., I opened our family group chat. I typed the first message that came into my head. Asterisk, if any of you ever try to dump another $4,000 bill on me again, you can forget I exist. Asterisk. I stared at it for nearly a minute. Then I deleted every word. My second draft wasn't much better. Asterisk, congratulations. You finally found the exact price of my patience. Asterisk. Delete. It felt satisfying. It also felt pointless. Instead, I wrote something much shorter. Asterisk, going forward, I'll gladly attend family meals where expenses are agreed upon in advance and shared as planned. If that's not possible, I'll politely decline. I love all of you, and I'm no longer willing to confuse love with unlimited financial responsibility. Asterisk. I read it twice before pressing send at 8:22 a.m. No accusations. No insults. Nothing to argue with. Vanessa replied 4 minutes later. Just 6 words. Asterisk, do whatever makes you feel important. Asterisk. That was all. No apology. No explanation. Oddly, it didn't upset me. For years, I had measured peace by whether Vanessa approved of my choices. Now I measured it by something much simpler. Whether I could look at myself in the mirror without explaining away another compromise. A month later, Dad invited a handful of neighbors, coworkers, and relatives to our house for what he called retirement dinner, take two. There was no lobster. Instead, we served homemade clam chowder, grilled salmon, fresh bread, and apple pie. Before dinner began, Dad placed Grandma Eleanor's silver lobster cracker in the center of the table anyway. Not because anyone needed it, but because, for the first time in a very long while, it truly belonged at a table where everyone was welcome and no one was expected to pay for someone else's place.